As many of you know, in May we were supposed to have a test for all of our students, but because of these unfortunate circumstances in March we had to close down. But because of that, we weren't able to go ahead with our regularly planned testing in May. But that testing was a very important date for us because that was not only a Keller Belt testing, but that was going to be our first black belt testing here at the school in the 3 years we've been open. And at that time, I was going to be testing my first black belt, which I was very excited to do so, Trevor. And I'm very happy to give him his black belt today. I think 20 years training on and off is long enough to wait. I want to tell you a little bit about Trevor and his journey up until this moment. You know, Trevor had no idea today was going to be the day he got his black belt. I planned it that way. I wanted to surprise him. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we've arrived at this point. You know, the journey to black belt is a long and arduous one. It's definitely been that for Trevor. Trevor started when he was very young. He's been training on and off. A lot of times me dragging him out to the woods, telling him, you know, you got to hold this paddle for me. You got to, you know, punch in my face so I can work on my blocks and all this kind of stuff. You got to hit the macawar with me. You have to be my macawar. But, you know, it's been a beautiful and powerful journey. And I want to kind of start at the beginning. So my first really special story of Trevor is when I was 9 years old, I was training under Grandmaster Kim Moon Kwan. I just transferred to him. And, you know, at that time, we didn't really have like kids class and adult class. We just had class and, you know, the kids would train with the adults and all that kind of stuff. And I was sitting around with my friend after class and a bunch of other students, and we were kind of talking. And this one student, who's a blue belt in the school, probably mid-40s, comes running out of the locker room with this look of horror on his face, and he says, "Who peed in my shoe?" And we all just burst out laughing, thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And here comes little 3-year-old Trevor, just scuttling out behind him, comes running by, and starts to run out the front door. And my mom wasn't there yet, and so I thought, oh my God, I got to grab him before he runs out the front door. And I chased him down, and there was this little kind of entryway area. And in this particular office building, there was 2 offices up top that were just never rented out, and so it's always dark and creepy. And then there was like our school below. And he kind of had run up there and was sitting on the steps way up where it got all shadowy. And I followed him up there, and I sat down next to him, and I said, "Trevor, what, did you pee in a shoe?" You know? And he was like looking kind of sheepish, you know, like, and they kept asking. Eventually he admitted, yeah, I peed in his shoe. And we had a little laugh about it, but I told him, you know, you can't go around peeing in people's shoes. And after a moment, he turned to me and said, hey, Michael, you know, when can I join you on the floor? And it was when he said that I realized why he had peed in his shoe. It's because he wanted to do some training. He wanted to be noticed. He wanted us to realize that he wanted to do Taekwondo too. And it took us a few years for him to get on the mat. He was only 3 years old at the time. But when he was ready, he got to training. Trained for a long time. He had to restart like myself when we moved to Wisconsin. And he went all the way back up, got that blue belt a second time. And then, you know, Trevor, he's a very humble guy. And he doesn't talk a lot. That's why I'm talking for him, you know. He actually does probably better at this kind of presentation than I am, but he's also very closely guarded with his secrets and his stories. And I think the story he has to tell is really beautiful, and that's why I want to tell it today. So when he was 14 or thereabouts, 13 or 14, he was training in martial arts, but he got this opportunity to be a professional actor on an off-Broadway performance of The Sound of Music. And he traveled the world, all over Asia, Japan, and Korea, and China. And when I ended up going to Korea when I was older, I was like, yeah, my brother, you know, he did The Sound of Music over here. He performed at this theater. And they're like, oh my God, that's the biggest theater in Seoul. You know, I mean, he was, you know, kind of a sort of a legend in our family at that time for what he was doing. And he had a private tutor to follow around and teach him. And so there was really no opportunity for him to continue with his training at that time. So he kind of fell out for a time. But And even when he came back, he was so involved with musical. He started working for the professional children's theater in town. Milwaukee has one of the best children's theaters in the country. And so he started working for them, and he was part of their really well-known acting troupe called Young Company. And he had to be completely focused on that because the intensity of it all, and he barely go to school because he was really focused on doing that acting and whatnot. And actually, he's a very humble guy, so I probably never tell you this, but he was the #1 actor in his acting troupe, and he got this big award when he graduated from high school. And then he went off to college, and he got all A's except for 1B. He got 1B. And the 1B stopped him from being the valedictorian, but he did get into Brown University, which was quite impressive, an Ivy League school. So when Trevor went off to college, he had a choice. He could go and try to go to a Juilliard kind of place, or he could have the opportunity to make sure that he was a well-educated individual and could go to a great school like Brown. And he chose to do that. Now, when he was at Brown, he continued with his acting. He became a pirate and sung sea shanties and did all sorts of crazy stuff there. But he also had some more time on his hands, and he was able to rekindle his passion for Taekwondo. And he started, training with the Brown Taekwondo team, which is kind of hilarious. My original master started the Brown Taekwondo team because we used to live in Rhode Island way back when I first started Taekwondo. And that's where it's just kind of this weird coincidence. So he got this kind of a full circle coming, and he was training with them. And then once he graduated, he was like trying to, become the starving actor in New York. And it was the same time I was starting my school, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to make this work. There was a brief period where we, after about the first year or so, we were big enough that we were still small enough that I needed a lot of help, but we were big enough that it was hard for me to do it on my own. So I reached out to Trevor and I said, hey, could you come out here and help me get the school off the ground? And, he dropped everything and came out here to help me. So I'm very appreciative of that. I knew this was going to happen, guys. I knew it was going to happen, but... So anyway, long story short, Trevor comes out here. He's working for me, and I said, Trevor, I know your training hasn't been, the most consistent over the last, 10, 15 years, but you've been working hard with me when, I ran my summer camp. You come to my summer camp, and you drop in during my club hours and work out with us and all this kind of stuff. I think, you deserve that black belt. And, 20 years for a black belt, that's crazy. And he said, no, I want to earn it. I don't want you just to give it to me. I want to learn all your curriculum. I want to go up through the ranks. I want to start where I was. And so I was very proud. So anyway, he put in his time. He's been here now for 2 years, working hard to get to where he is. And I think he deserves that black belt. And I don't just want to give him any black belt. I like to give him my black belt. Now, before this becomes complete waterworks, I want to tell you a little bit about this particular belt. I got this belt when I went off to Korea. I was starting a new journey, and I wanted a plain black belt because even though I trained for more than 20 years before I ever went to Korea, I wanted to humble myself. I was in a new world, with a new culture, and learning new things. And I didn't want to come across as this sort of arrogant, high-ranked black belt. So I just got myself a plain black belt. And so this belt means a lot to me. It's got a lot of sweat. You know, I used to train 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Fortunately, this belt is this ridiculously tough belt, and I haven't been able to put as much wear on as I like, even though I train real hard. But I'm confident that in the years Trevor wears this belt, he'll put in that wear that needs to be done. So anyway, let's give him a big hand, everybody. Let's see you guys on the mats on Tuesday.